Belton, thank you very much for, this intimate conversation that we were having today regarding my fifth book, The Wealth Choice. And let me give you the backflap story. This book really began in one of my MBA classes many years ago. And my students asked me, they said, Dr. Kimbro, what are you working on now? And I told them, I said, I'm surveying Black millionaires. And I said, you know, it would be a good assignment if I brought in the actual survey and let you guys go ahead and critique it. You're the experts in the field. So I brought the survey in and they made a few adjustments, this, that, and everything. And I placed the finishing touches on it and I sent it out there. And I thought that the wealth choice, and I still believe this hard, is more than an adequate follow-up to Think and Grow Rich and What Makes the Great Great. That just seemed to be the natural path or swim lane for this book, with the two prior books talking about success and achievement for African Americans in all walks of life. So what I did, I crafted a 118 question survey that I was going to use to go ahead and capture the thoughts and the ambitions and their keys to success to Black America's financial elite. Now, Velton, initially, I didn't know that I could get a representative sample of Black millionaires. So I was thinking about an escape hatch, a way out that I wouldn't make a fool out of myself and say, well, I didn't get millionaires, but I got some affluent African Americans. But after I came up with the idea of holding focus groups, simultaneously holding focus groups, I said, this will ensure that I get a representative sample. So what initially started out as only being a survey now turned into a survey with also focus groups attached. And then I decided to go one step further. I said, well, I got the survey in one hand, I got the focus group in the other. How about if I identify 50 to 60 of these individuals and really talk to them about wealth, leadership, and success? So that's the methodology that I use for this book. But let me go back even further, and any folks who are on this podcast, this mini webinar concerning wealth, if you really don't know what I'm about and what I've done. In 1908, there was a knock on the door of the wealthiest individual in the country, if not the world, and that was certainly Andrew Carnegie. The gentleman doing the knocking was a 24-year-old part-time college student at Georgetown University by the name of Napoleon Hill. Today, people certainly know of Napoleon Hill and what he has written. His all-time classic is two classics, one called Law of Success and the other one called Think and Grow Rich. Well, in 1908, there was a knock on the door. At the time, Napoleon Hill was a nondescript writer, writing and submitting articles for Bob Taylor magazine, which is no longer in existence. How Bob Taylor was actually able to go ahead and get a 1-hour interview with the world's wealthiest, well, that's a different story. And he certainly sent Napoleon Hill on the task to capture the thoughts and the ideas of Andrew Carnegie. Well, Carnegie had a 64-room mansion overlooking Central Park in New York on Fifth Avenue. And his butler goes down to the door, answers the door, and takes Napoleon Hill by the arm to Andrew Carnegie's book-lined study. And in that study were certainly thousands of, certainly hundreds, if not thousands of books. He had pamphlets, he had quotes and aphorisms on the wall and everything. And Hill immediately knew that when it came to achievement and came to motivation and inspiration, he was certainly at the footstool, if not at the center of gravity of success. But he and Andrew Carnegie hit it off immediately. Why? Because Hill, the last thing on Hill's mind was all the trappings, all the bling bling of success, the cars, the amenities, certainly the luxurious home and like didn't concern Hill at the least. The only thing that Napoleon Hill was concerned about was the mindset. What makes this individual completely different that he would attract this into his life? So many of the questions that he asked Carnegie had nothing to do with the outward appearance, but certainly everything to do with the inner underpinnings of his success. And the hour went by ever so quickly. Well, Carnegie took a liking to Napoleon Hill, and he says, young man, I'll tell you what, don't leave. I got more than a room here. Why don't you stay the entire weekend and we can continue this conversation? So Friday afternoon turned into all day Saturday and turned into the better part of a Sunday. And 3 o'clock on Sunday, when it was time for Hill to leave, Andrew Carnegie asked him, I guess, the $64,000 question. He pointed to Hill in the study. He said, you see that roll top desk over there? And Hill said, yes. He said, in that desk, I got a black book, and I got the names and contact numbers of all the wealth creators here, particularly in the United States. I'm asking you a simple question. If I could set the interviews up, would you go and would you sit down with Thomas Edison? Would you sit down with Harvey Firestone? Would you sit down with Alexander Graham Bell? Would you sit down with Henry Ford and the like and ask them the same questions that you asked me? And would you take their answers and responses and place it in a book that would not only benefit our generation, but certainly generations to come? And at the time, Hill didn't know it, but Carnegie had a stopwatch behind his desk. Now, some folks said it took him 29 seconds. The Napoleon Hill Foundation told me that it took 11 seconds. And Hill answered the question so quickly that Carnegie was caught off guard. He says, young man, he says, listen, you need to hear me loud and clear. I don't care if this assignment takes you 8 months, 8 years. I don't care if it takes you 20 months or 20 years. I'm not going to pay you a dime for your effort. I will reimburse you for any costs for the interviews and the travel and the like, but you're not going to get a dime for this. But my thinking is that if you do the type of job that I believe you're capable of doing, this book will be fortunate enough. And again, Hill underscored and highlighted that he would do it. Well, that book became the law of success, and Carnegie was exactly right. It created Hill's first fortune. After Law of Success, Napoleon Hill wrote 15 other books, and one of those books, published in 1937, was entitled Think and Grow Rich, and that is the bell cow of all of his publishing. Think and Grow Rich, Hill identified 17 surefire principles, antecedents, if you will, that would lead to financial success. That book certainly focused in on financial success. He came up with 17 principles. Number 1, definiteness of purpose, mastermind, applied faith, going the extra mile. Those are the top 4. But if you look at principles 15 through 17, pleasing personality all the way to cosmic happenstance, or cosmic habit force. And what in the world is cosmic habit force? Once you get started, though, money will be added unto you if you need money. Resources will be added unto you if you need resources. Time and contacts will be added unto you if you need time and contacts. Just the fact that you have stepped out there on faith, everything will be added unto you, as the Bible says. But the only reason why Napoleon Hill came up with principles 5 through 17 was to get you to focus on the big 4, definiteness of purpose. And definiteness of purpose certainly is the key. That is a lodestar. He talks about a burning desire. Everybody's got 50 million different desires. I got a desire right now. I'm sitting in my study. I got to finish all these papers, calculate my grades, get it off my desk. Everybody's got a desire. But there's a difference between a desire and a burning desire. And according to Hill, a burning desire is an inner candle, an inner flame that cannot be extinguished. And though the worst may go before you, doubters will come, cynics may come, critics may come, disbelievers, non-believers, and certainly underachievers will come and point out everything that will go wrong. You will use their doubt, you will use their cynicism, and you will use their criticism to propel you forward. Well, I looked at, over a 7-year period when I was writing my first book, Think and Grow Rich, Your Black Choice, which actually was book number 17 of Napoleon Hill. He was attempting to write a black version of his all-time classic. He got 100 pages into the manuscript, and here we are, Belton, the year of my study. That manuscript right over there, those 100 pages are on my desk back there. I guess I should place those 100 pages in the safe deposit box if anything goes wrong with this house. Maybe one day I'll do that. in his writing on his Hamilton Beach typewriter entitled Blacks Are Growing Rich. He got 100 pages into the manuscript, died of a stroke. He was 87 years old. And on that day, November 3rd, 1986, when W. Clement Stone called me up and asked me to fly to his office on the outskirts of Chicago, Illinois, and he placed that manuscript in my lap. I just thought that if I could just focus on Black millionaires at this particular time in my life, in Belton, this was like 2007, maybe 2005, 2006, and the like, 7-year period, a 7-year study on wealth creators, on those individuals. Now, what did I find out? I found 7 best practices, if you will. If people want to scale their business, if they want to scale their finances and their resources, 7 best practices that Black millionaires all use. And at the top of the list, number 1, they made a decision. They made a conscious decision that they would not be poor. And I saw so many different examples of that. I remember when I interviewed Victor McFarlane, and Victor McFarlane, big time realtor. He was on par to be a billionaire, but couldn't hold it because of the '08 recession. And he shared the story with me, the first 8 years of his life, raised by a single parent in a little small town in Ohio. And when he told me that the first 10 years of his life, he, his oldest sister, and his mother lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And that 1 bedroom was certainly for his mother. He had a couch in that apartment, and that couch led out into a bed, unfolded into a bed. And he told me the first 10 years of his life, he and his oldest sister slept on that couch. And I said to him, I said, Mr. McFarlane, that had to have been tough, that had to have been rough. And he cut me off at the knees. And he said, no, when I look back at it, that was the best period of my life. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I was sleeping on that couch every night, that I made a conscious decision that poverty would have no part in my life. Until you make that decision, that's counter to success. There are no bargains. You got to pay the price, and you got to pay it in full, whatever it is. And if you're going to haggle over the price, that means you're not ready for it anyway. I suggest you go do something else. You pay the price, you pay it in advance, get it over with, get on with it, and whatever. The Bible says, work out your own salvation. What in the world does that mean? Go ahead and solve the problem. Solve the problem, get it over with, get on with it. Number 2, which is critical, man, to these. Number 1, they made a conscious decision that they weren't going to be poor in their life. And I'm just getting, what I'm going to do, Velton, I mean, all of these are critically important. But I'm going to share the key points of each. I'm going to share the key points of all these 7 habits. They focused on the unique gifts, and they focused on their strengths. Now, I'm certainly, cutting around, but I don't want you to miss the point. Because so many folks say, well, I made a decision, now what do I do? You got to find your area of excellence. And that's what they all did. As my dear friend Simon Bailey, you brought him up, and he offers those 4 questions. Question number 1, where have you been? Question number 2, what can you do? When you get to question number 2, what can you do? You got to be able to focus on your area of excellence. What do you do well? We got an opportunity to do whatever we got to do, but sooner or later, you got to master your skill. What do you do well? Find your area of excellence. And there's only 3 questions that you can ask yourself in order to find your area of excellence. Question number 1, what is so different and unique about you? And we're all different and unique at some particular point. Question number 2, what would you do for free? If no one ever paid you a dime, if no one ever gave you financial rewards for your efforts, whatever, what would you do for free? Because when you're doing what you love and you would do it for free, your work is your play. And if your work is your play, you'll never work a day in your life. And I was going to show you something, but I'm not going to do that, Brother Belton. I was going to show you, let me see if I have it here. And like, oh man, nope. I apologize. You're gonna have to edit this. Sorry. In terms of your area of excellence. We'll get them next time. So number one, what would you do for free? If no one ever gave you financial reward for your efforts and the like, what would you do for free? And then question number three, if you can't answer the previous questions, go to those people who you respect and admire and you ask, what do you see me as? What do you think I would be good at doing? When you identify your area of excellence, two things you never have to worry about. Number one, you never have to worry about income. And number two, you never have to worry about, employment. Why? The marketplace will seek you out. So they made a conscious decision they weren't going to be poor. Number two, they identified their area of excellence. The next, best practice, and again, I'm hopping around right here, the wealth choice is really, I'm a Johnny come lately, man. I sort of piggyback on a book development that was written in 1897. In 1897, Black America's most prolific scholar, W.B. Du Bois, wrote a book called The Negro in Business. And he was a professor at Atlanta University. And during the summer months, he would get on a train and traipse up and down the East Coast on the train and stop off at all the major cities and interview Black business people. They weren't called entrepreneurs at the time, trying to find the keys to success. And in that book, within the first 30 pages of the book, there are two quotes by Du Bois that are so profound and so applicable today. Now, this book was published in 1897, and here we are in 2020, and it's so apropos. Question, statement number one that he says, the man or woman who won't control his or her finances won't control anything else. And what does he mean when he says, all right, won't control anything else? He says, if you don't care about the money in your pocket, what do you care about, low Black high school graduation rates? What do you care about, the pandemic that's going on in our community right now? And then another statement that he has within the first 30 pages of the book, he says, nothing positive will ever occur in a community that fails to circulate its dollars. Okay, so what in the world does that have to do with the wealth choice? Because again, one of the best practices that I found out with these individuals, you are in business for yourself. No matter what you do for a living, you are in business for yourself. You are your own wealth creator. I found so many different examples of folks who are in business for themselves. I remember an interview that I had years ago. I interviewed a young lady who was what was called a Microsoft millionaire, Belton. And here she was. She was one of the first that Bill Gates hired. She got her degree. You're talking about you went to Rutgers University. Well, she went to school in New Jersey. And she was one of the first to come out with a degree in computer science and staying in New Jersey or the New York area. She goes out to California and working in Silicon Valley and gets a job with Microsoft. And people boo-hooed her. They said, girl, you gotta be crazy. You go out there with this startup, you're gonna be unemployed. You're gonna be looking for another job within 90 days and this, that, and the other. And she said, I'm not gonna have none of it. I'm gonna do what I really want to do. So the fact of the matter, she goes out there and sure enough, Bill Gates couldn't pay her what she was worth. And he says, well, listen, I'll give you stock options and the like. So she goes out there, and after close to 3 years of working, one day the stock splits. And then 90 to 120 days, 4 months later, it splits again. And then, after 4 years, it starts splitting every month and this, that, and everything. And before she had been there a little bit more than 6 years, she had, cashed out as a Microsoft millionaire. Well, that certainly goes into one of the best practices. Thou shalt own thy own business. No matter what you do for a living, you are president of your own corporation. You are CEO of You Incorporated. And, you know, a paycheck is given to those individuals who just do what they're required to do, but opportunity is given to those individuals who go above and beyond of what they are called to do. I guess the next best practice is believe in yourself when no one else will. Okay, so what does my data point out? Well, my data points out that the average Black millionaire doesn't get his or her dream to becoming a millionaire until age 30. I tell my students and I tell individuals, if you are earning 6 figures by age 30, don't listen to me. You don't need for you to read my books. Don't have to listen to anybody. Just keep doing what you are doing. And then from age 30 to age 41, you'll be so close to being a millionaire, but certainly by age 50, you will be a millionaire. One of the keys that I pointed out in my book, the reason why we don't have more Black millionaires, because by age 41, folks are certainly affluent and they are living so comfortably that they won't make that added push to go ahead and become a millionaire. And that certainly occurs between age 41 and age 50. But you got to understand, you know, believe in yourself when no one else will. Why? Because what is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship, highs and lows, ups and downs, ins and outs. People ask me, when does the roller coaster end? Folks are on a roller coaster right now. Well, it never ends. It only ends when you get off the roller coaster. And like I said, we're certainly on a roller coaster, so you are going to have to persist. And persistence is the level of belief that you have in yourself. So many examples in the book of folks who persisted. Certainly what immediately comes to mind, Greg Barranco. Greg Barranco, here's a guy who I had a great interview with. He was from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And when he finished when he finished college with his degree in hand, he had one dream, one vision. And he wanted his own car dealership. At the time, the #1 dealer in the Baton Rouge, Louisiana was Audubon Ford, and they didn't hire Black sales reps. As a matter of fact, back at that time in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, if you were African American, you couldn't even go into the showroom at Audubon Ford. They would barely let you, allow you to go ahead and walk on the lot and pick out your car. And when you were ready to buy the car, a sales rep came out and all of your business and transactions were done and completed right there in the lot versus the showroom. Well, he had to persist. For 30 straight days, he asked them for an opportunity to sell on their behalf. And by the 30th day, they finally gave in, gave him an opportunity. And today, don't you know that Audubon Ford is still in existence in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Greg Barranco still holds the sales records. So, persistence is certainly key. Service, I have a chapter in there on their sales skills. If you're going to create wealth, you got to be able to go ahead and master the key to sales. And the formula for sales is Q plus MA equals C. The quality of your service plus the quantity of your service plus the mental attitude in which it is rendered always equals sales and compensation. And don't poo-poo sales. I tell my business owners all the time, man, sales is the quickest way up the ladder. The Red Sea of capitalism, the Red Sea of free enterprise will part for the individual who can bring sales through the door. When you take the term capitalism, and Velton, I gotta tell you this, man, we just banner that word about. We really don't have a capitalistic society. I mean, I can go on my bookshelf and I can go ahead and get you and show you a copy of my copy of Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. And if you can get past all the highlighting and all the underlining and all the notes in the margin, what we have in this country really isn't capitalism. It's more like socialism for the financial elite. Why? Because Adam Smith points out if you are truly going to have a capitalistic economy, it is based on freedom. I've got to give you the freedom to pursue your divine self-interest, and you've got to give me the freedom to pursue my divine self-interest. And who will benefit? The greater good. And whenever you block another party from pursuing their divine self-interest, all the bets to capitalism is off. And that's Adam Smith. He said the one key that you need in order for capitalism to succeed is ethical leadership. is freedom for the other party. And Velton, all you got to do is look at Black America. We've been blocked, we've been blockaded, we've been barred from pursuing our divine self-interest. And going back to Adam Smith, he says it's so simple. Why must we even talk about it? So the fact of the matter is, man, service is the price you pay for the space that you occupy, and anybody can serve. I tell my students all the time, that individual standing on the street corner with a cardboard sign saying I will work for food, got the same opportunity Oprah Winfrey got the same opportunity Bill Gates, and they look at me like I'm crazy. They said, Dr. Kimbro, you got to be kidding. I said, no, because anybody can wow the customer. Anybody can do more than what is expected, more than what is required. And in today's business world and today's business opportunity entrepreneurs, the days are gone that you sell to a customer. No, you got to sell to your customer's customer today. And you got to find a way to digitize your product or service. I mean, what in the world is Google? Google is a public library digitized. What in the world is Craigslist? Craigslist is the Yellow Pages digitized. What in the world is, Netflix? Netflix is Blockbuster Video digitized. What in the world is Zoom? Zoom is the office meeting digitized. You got to find a way to digitize your product or service. And Velton, I got to tell you, here we are in this pandemic. And if they would just think, if all the folks who are performing and the diagnostics and all the companies producing these tests would just find a way out to digitize it. Because Velton, when the airline industry gets back, no one is able to get onto that plane without showing that, that barcode in your smartphone. That's the only way you're going to board the plane. And when we talk about digitizing, you talk about scaling a business. At the top of scaling is matching revenues with financial resources and benchmarking, looking at best practices. So let's look at best practice. Here we are, we got a pandemic going on, and we're trying to find out how we can test everybody in a fast, efficacious manner. Well, let's benchmark. Right now, I can call and I can log on to ancestry.com though, and they can send me a packet, and in that packet is a Q-tip and a container, and they want me to swab the inside of my mouth, throw that in a container, send it back to ancestry.com, and within 4 to 6 weeks later, tell me about anything about me, my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. If I'm a minority of color, Native American or Black, to tell me about my tribe within 99.9% accuracy, anything and everything about me. Okay? So that can be done in 4 to 6 weeks. If I'm not feeling well, if something's wrong with my intestines, whatever, and I contact my physician, he could go ahead and he could contact Cologuard, and they can send a packet, to my house. And the next time that I use the restroom, go ahead and take a swab and put it on a sheet, put it in a container, and send it to the diagnostic lab. And within 2 weeks, within 99.9% accuracy, they could tell me to either contact my physician or schedule a colonoscopy. They could tell me what's going on. So now we've gone from 4 to 6 weeks down to 2 weeks. Where I'm seated right now, Velton, within less than a half a mile from my house, there's a Walgreens. And I can walk down the female hygiene aisle, and I can pick out a pregnancy test, bring it back home, give it to one of my 3 daughters. The next time they use the restroom, take a swab in less than 5 minutes, tell my daughter the news that she wants to hear one way or another. So here you are. You went from 4 to 6 weeks, down to 2 weeks, down to 5 minutes, because you scaled. So what does that have to do with best practices and with testing for this pandemic? Until you find a way that that test can be done at home, and you go ahead and take a swab of your mouth, and you put that swab into this container, and if it turns a certain color, they will email you a barcode, turns a certain color, and you will find a number at the bottom of that container. And just like if you ever wanted to change your password to Facebook, or you wanted to change your password to Google, Gmail, or whatever, they will email you or they will text you a number. and you type that number in and it will change your password and you can get a barcode, and that barcode will be downloaded to your cell phone. Now, it may seem like I'm rambling or whatever, but that's certainly what needs to take place today now for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, you got to digitize. Entrepreneurs, you got to find out the keys to the kingdom. And what are the keys to the kingdom? No longer do you sell wants and needs. You sell feelings. Why in the world did you buy the iPhone instead of the Android? Because when I'm on my iPhone, I feel creative. I feel innovative. I feel like I'm an entrepreneur. Why in the world did you buy, your Nike shoes instead of Under Armour? Well, when I wear the Nike shoes, I feel like an athlete. I feel like a first-round draft choice. Why in the world did you buy MAC Cosmetics instead of Revlon? Because when I wear MAC Cosmetics, man, I feel fierce. I feel like I'm walking the red carpet. I feel like I'm in control. And that's certainly, when you look at the best practices, when you look at the 5th and 6th law, the 5th law, how may I serve thee? And the 6th law, you are in business for yourself. And that certainly brings us to law 7, which is make thy money grow. Make thy money grow. I don't care where you start. I don't care, how much money you've got in the bank. When it comes down to your financial resources, like I said, you're president, you're CEO of your own corporation. And it's not how much money you spend, it's how much money you keep. I mean, that's the bottom line. There is no faster entity than certainly the stock market. You look at the stock market in the last 20 years on par, and I know there's highs and lows, I know there's ups and downs, but you couldn't save that fast enough. I mean, you couldn't save that fast. The average stock market each year, 10 to 14 years, more likely 12 to 14 years. And Velton, here's the key. When you look at a Bill Gates, and when you look at a Jeff Bezos, and they say Jeff Bezos' net worth right now is anywhere between 109 billion to 115. When you look at Bill Gates, they say his net worth right now is 100 to 109 billion and blah, blah, blah. They're not talking about, the receipts, the revenue all from their businesses. No. You look at Gates, and Gates takes his profits, whatever his profits are every year from Microsoft, whether it be 30 to 40 billion, and he invested. And what is he invested in? He invested in super stocks. Can you name at one time, Chipotle was a super stock. At one time, iPhone was a super stock. At one time, Netflix was a super stock. And what do these super stocks render? Instead of 12 to 14%, they're rendering like 20 to 30%. And that's how they accrued it. And if you ever wanted to find the gap, they talk about the wealth gap right now. What is the wealth gap predicated upon? Those who invest in the stock market and those who don't. So there you are. There's the recap. All the 7 best practices. Wealth begins in the mind, but ends in the purse. Make a decision that you will not be poor. Believe in yourself when no one else will. To thy own self be true. You are in business for yourself. How may I serve thee? And make thy money grow. Now, I know I did a whole bunch of rambling. It's been a while since I spoke about the wealth choice because I moved on to other things. But hey, that's the cut and dry. That is the backflap story to that book.